Right on, folks. So I know that we still have people trickling in and expect that to happen here for the next little bit. Um, but in the interest of time, I just want to go ahead and begin to get us started. So if you haven't introduced yourself in the chat, please do that. Yeah, and I just want to say welcome, and let's go ahead and get started here.
So welcome everyone. My name is Belen Gonzalez. I'm a consultant. I'm joined here today with Sarah Gonzalez and Frank Velasquez, who are also consultants supporting this forum today. Before we officially get started, I want to take a moment just to provide a few recognitions. Given that we're all participating virtually, I think it's just important to recognize the environment in which we are all living and working. First, I want to recognize the indigenous land that I am calling in from today as Hohokam, O'odam, and Akmiel O'odam. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who have contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that has led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will, some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life, and some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. So again, I just want to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. And the land that I am currently calling in from is, again, Hohokam, O'odam, and Akmiel O'odam. I also want to take a moment to reflect on the injustices that are happening in our community across the country and really globally. Particularly, I want to remember, and most recently, remember Walter Wallace, who recently passed in Philadelphia at the hands of police. The story has gone on and on for decades, hundreds of years. So I want to remember not only Walter, but the others before him. Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and the many, many others. I also want to take a moment to remember the 545 children still currently detained by ICE. Many, all actually, who were separated by from their parents by ICE. And now ICE cannot locate their parents, many of whom had been deported without their children. On top of all of this, we are still living in a pandemic, still facing the realities of COVID-19, where disparities continue to play out. We are isolated, we are social distancing, and I just want to take a moment just to recognize that, as well as this major election upcoming next week. There's a lot of tension in the air, there's a lot of anxiety in the air. So while we thank you for joining us today, we also want to remind you to take care of yourself. If you have children in your household or other adults that you need to care for during our time together, please do. If you have pets or creatures at home that you need to take care of during our time together, please do. And to connect with one another. I see you all introducing yourself via chat. Please keep it going and keep the connection going. That is another important part of our work today. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Michael to provide a little bit more context and history about this effort.
Thank you. Thank you, Belen. So yeah, I just want to talk a little bit more. This is our third day of the conference, and it's been so powerful. I'm so grateful for the way that folks in this community have shown up to share from their hearts, but also to listen from their hearts. It's really been a beautiful experience, and I'm really confident about what we're doing, and that this is not just going to be another conversation, but that this is some really essential groundwork that we're laying to actually roll up our sleeves and do something different together. And so I just want to acknowledge that this forum is the result of a lot of folks who have been working individually at grassroots levels and in different organizations for a number of years to try to figure out how do we produce better outcomes for young men? How do we improve support systems? How do we build our programming and our initiatives in ways that actually center and honor the dignity and the experience of the youth in this community, and in ways that can actually meaningfully show up for them? And so I want to honor the Lovell Foundation because this past year they really provided us with a planning grant and with the support that we needed to look at what it would take for the community to really come together in a much more concerted way to try to transform the support systems and what's available here for young men and masculine identified youth in Tucson. And so we've been working really hard with the Southwest Institute for Research on Women, the Consortium on Gender-Based Violence, the Emerge Center Against Domestic Abuse, and the Pima County Youth Violence Prevention Coalition, as well as Belen and Sarah with their consulting group, Gonzalez Consulting Group, throughout the course of this summer to really try to do a deep dive and gather a comprehensive understanding of what folks are going through and what the opportunities are to do something different and do something better. And that's what this forum is really all about. And I'm just so excited here as we head into the final session today with what we're really going to do here this morning. But then for the back half of today's workshops, where we're really going to take everything we've learned and get together in some small groups and try to actually work on some things, work on a plan. So just wanted to share that little bit of context.
Thank you, Michael. So today specifically, the agenda we have in front of us today, we'll review the group agreements. Michael will facilitate a young men's circle. We'll talk about one of the themes we identified in our research and discovery phase around systems, and specifically how systems punish and harm young men and masculine identified youth. We'll have another creative break today with a graffiti artist. We're going to also discuss collective impact framework and begin to identify some strategies and opportunities to move this work forward. And then we'll close out our time together. Sarah, do you want to talk about our group agreements?
Yeah, so today we're going to have diverse perspectives, and people will be speaking their truths, and so some perspectives might activate some discomfort for you, and so we ask you to choose authenticity over comfort today. As Belen mentioned earlier in the beginning of the session, we're living in a moment in time that is very challenging for many of us, and so we ask you to embrace messiness and give people kindness as we move through this session. We also want you to practice personal and group accountability. You know, we assume positive intent, but also own your impact. And, you know, be aware of equity of voice. There are folks in the space that feel comfortable speaking in large groups, and those that might not. If you are an individual that feels comfortable speaking in a large group, please, you know, just lean back to allow those that haven't spoken to speak. We want to make sure that we hear all voices, and for those that aren't comfortable speaking in large groups, we ask you to lean in today because we want to hear your voice. Listen with the same passion with which you want to be heard. And lastly, honor subjectivity over objectivity. And what we mean by that is really honor people's stories. There's value in people's lived experience. Okay. And so we'd like to hear from you today. And in the chat box, if you can tell us, when was the last time you felt seen or heard? When was the last time you felt seen or heard? this morning? Thank you, Mary. Yesterday at Skyline Island Alliance Board meeting, y'all were discussing DEI issues. Thanks, Tim. This morning in a working session. Thank you, Catherine. When you were asked to be here this morning. Thank you, Ramiro. I rarely felt unseen or unheard. Thank you, Dan. On our challenge adventure. Thanks, Michael. Chatting this morning at school drop-offs with a girlfriend. Thank you, Holly. So we encourage you to keep answering this question in the chat box, and we're going to move on to the next part of the session.
Right on. Cool. Thank you, Sarah, and thanks everybody for participating. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a youth circle. And these young men who are with us this morning, this awesome group of guys that I have the pleasure of knowing, we're just going to make some space. I have some questions set up. We're going to check in the way that we normally do that with the Boys to Men circle. And I just want to say a piece for the adults before we get going. You know, so we really intentionally created this space to hear from these guys today. Some of our foundational framework at Boys to Men when we work with mentors is we start by training them what not to do. So you don't fix, don't rescue, don't advise, don't project. And the main thing we ask them to learn how to do is to just hold space and to not take it up. And so I'm going to ask the same thing of the adults this morning. This is just an opportunity to really listen. We're so grateful. This is really generous of these young men to be here with us. And so if you have questions, you have a lot cooking, just hang on to it. Just be present for these folks. There will be other opportunities as we move this initiative forward to do this kind of work. But what we're doing right here this morning is really about listening and honoring what these young men have to say. So Ramiro, I see you, wave your hand. Iran, I see you, wave your hand. Armando, I see you, wave your hand, please. Angel, you can't wave your hand because your camera is having trouble. Maybe you can like do a little clap emoji. Ramiro and I, we can describe your physical description to the group if you want, so everybody knows what you look like. He's a great young man. So let's just start by checking in, guys. And I will call on you just to make it a little bit easier. You guys have a little bit of an idea of what we're doing here. It's really about like getting adults to understand how to be more helpful and to be more supportive for you guys. And so this is just a chance for you guys to be heard. Angel, you got it. Good work, buddy. So maybe wave at everybody, Angel. Thank you. So we're going to check in. So I'm going to ask you guys, say your name. If you don't mind, say your age, just so folks know. And then name 2 feelings that we can feel in our bodies this morning. And if you're willing to, I'm going to put you right on the spot right up front. Talk about something that you feel proud of yourself about. Something about how you're doing in your life, that makes you proud, that makes you feel good. And then I'll have a few more questions for you, and we'll go maybe until about 9:45. So I'm going to start with you, Armando. Will you get us going?
Hello, I'm Armando. This morning I'm feeling some angst and some happiness and some things that keep me going, that make me proud of being alive is my parents, mostly my mom. They come a long way, even though they put me through a lot when I was a child. We're all on a journey to kind of heal from everything, especially me. So that's one of the things that keeps me going, and I love them a lot. So, and I'll pass it on to Angel.
My name's Angel. I'm 14. I'm feeling happy to be here, and a little tired because I just woke up. And wait, what was the question again?
What's something that makes you feel proud of yourself when you think about all the things you're holding down, what you're doing in your life? What are you proud about?
Something I'm proud about is just at least having the time to go to a little park by my house and playing basketball with one of my one of my friends that comes, and just taking that time to just release all my anger and everything on basketball. And with that, I'm in, and I'll pass it to Ramiro.
Um, my name is Ramiro. I'm 16, and um, I feel kind of anxious today and kind of happy to be here. Um, Something I'm proud of, probably just to be here another day. Um, yeah, is there anyone else that I'm missing?
Yeah. Thank you, Ramiro. That's great. I appreciate that. Iran, how about you? Would you check in, buddy?
Yes. My name is Iran. I'm 16, and I'm feeling cold today, just like yesterday, and like awaken. Just those two words. I'm in.
Right on. Thank you, Iran. Thanks again, you guys, for showing up this morning. So here's the first question I'm going to ask you all. And if someone passes it to you and you're like, oh, you know what, I need a few more minutes to think about that, you can just say so, okay? But so I'm wondering if you guys would think about the places or adults in your life right now that you feel safe with, that make you feel safe, that are like your spaces, you're really comfortable. If something's difficult, you know that you can go there and let down your guard, you can get support, you can talk about it. So again, it's either places or even adults, but just the places in your life where it's like, it comforts you, it gives you something that you need, and you know when you really need that person or that place to deal with the struggles, that's a place you can go. And if you don't mind, I know I'm giving you a lot here, so I can prompt you if you're like struggling to get there. Tell us about why that is. What is it about that place that makes you feel like you can trust it, that it's reliable for you? So I'll start with you, Armando, and then we'll go around.
All right. So one of the places that I still struggle, but I'm working on, is going to my mom. She's been there for me all my life. She raised me. So even though it's hard to connect with her, sometimes I go to her because she's my rock, and I try to remember that all the time. And then some other places I go, Boys to Men is always a good place for me, even now that I'm older, just because even if I don't know a person for that long that's in Boys to Men, I always feel comfortable just being real and being me. I have a lot of trouble like speaking to people I don't really know, especially men and guys. I have a hard time connecting with them. So Boys to Men like gave me a space for that. And not to like not to seem funny, but Michael, he's a really good person I like to go to. He's a good friend that I met through Boys to Men when I was younger. I first met him, and now that he's the director, he's still my really good friend, and he makes me feel good. And also a lot of the other people from Boys to Men that are mentors and just guys that I know from there. And yeah.
And can I ask you a question, Armando?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your vulnerability and what you're sharing. I'm wondering, for the sake of folks here, you know, when you talk about, you know, the men or even me or whoever, you know, but the folks that you're like, okay, these are people I can trust and it's helped me to work through it. Can you say like, what about it? Like what about it, whether it's Boys to Men or whatever, what about those places or those relationships make you feel safer than the other places in your life? Make them feel different.
So just there's like a different level of trust and understanding when it comes to like voice to men and a lot of the people around it. Just because when you start talking, like when me and you have talks, and when I start talking to other people from there, even the boys, like we just have so many similarities at the end of the day, even if we look completely different or act completely different. And the comfort, it's so easy to get comfortable because you feel like you're around like things that other people are not really always real about. You know, you can be completely honest and you could talk about the worst you've been through and things that are on your mind and that make you you, and you can like say all that and you actually feel heard for once, and you feel like you can express yourself in any way you want without being judged or bullied or anything like that.
Right on. Thank you, Armando. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
How about you, Ramiro?
Probably like my parents. They're really there for me. But if like something that I can't talk to them about, or like I don't want to, I'll go to voice to men. Voice to men like kind of is there too, kind of like a third parent in a way. They're really supportive. Most of them know what you've been through, so they could help you. And yeah, I feel very grateful for them.
Right on. Thank you, Ramiro. How about you, Angel? What are those adults or places that you feel safe with, and why?
People that feel safe with is mostly my mom, and um and if I really have to voice to men, if I can talk to my mom, like Ramiro said, then um I don't know if they're here, but it's either you, Michael, Armando, Kevin, Carl, and Landon. I haven't talked to other people, but I'm planning on to for the next thing that's gonna happen.
Right on. And so Angel's talking about some of the different mentors that support him and that we all share space together. And so I wonder, Angel, will you talk about, right? So like I appreciate that you named specific people. And could you talk about like what do those folks do that makes you be like, okay, this is like a good space for me. This is a space where I can let my guard down.
Well, there when we went to go look for your water bottle, Michael, at camping, me and Armando were talking like the whole way down there and the whole way back. And sometimes when I talk to Kevin, he just listens to me, and then he gives his opinion, and that's helps me too. And Carl, I ask him things, like I tell him stuff, and he just like answers back with questions that make me think about what's right and what's wrong with it. And Landon, he just helps me get through it.
Right on. Thank you for that thoughtful response. Carl is a wonderful question asker. It's something I aspire to. Okay, how about for you, Iran?
um Adults, or like people that I trust, are like my neighbors, like my neighborhood people, because they were here with me when like during like hard times, you know. And then like I still go to them till this day. And then you guys too, because like when we go on trips and everything, like like hiking, for example, I would stay with a mentor and like just talk about like all these thoughts and ideas that I have about like big ideas, you know.
And the first one you said, Iran, was neighbors that have like been with you through it for a
Yes.
long time. And would you talk about those relationships with those neighbors, and like what is it that makes it feel like a safe space for you?
I mean the because of the close proximity that I have with them, like because they're neighbors, you know. And then like they basically like watch over me when I'm hanging around in my neighborhood, you know. And then like I trust that about them.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, Iran. Thank you. I think a lot of what some of us have been talking about for the last few days is like expanding our mind of like what a mentor is and what makes mentorship. And I think that answer you're giving is it's helpful for me to think about it. So let me ask you guys another question. You know, and you just share like to your comfort level. But I wonder if you'd be willing to talk about what in your life makes it hard for you to let your guard down and to open up about what you're feeling. You know, you guys, and this year is a ridiculous year with virtual learning on top of it. But just like right in this journey of your teenage years, there's a lot of different pressures. There's a lot y'all are figuring out, and as you navigate all of those different things, what are the things in your life that make it hard for you, that make it seem like not worth it or not safe, or like, you know what, I'm not gonna like let my guard down and talk about what's really going on for me. And if you don't want to answer this question, you can also say pass. That's totally reasonable. So let me give it to you, Armando.
So I know it sounds like a cliche, like, oh, the adults don't listen to me, like, but it's like as a teenager, you know. But it's I've heard a lot of stuff that's like, oh, you're going through a phase. I didn't know, you know. I didn't think that my kid could go through this. I didn't want to believe it. So for me, it's usually like the ignoring, like you giving your heart and soul out to somebody. You could be like on your last stand where you feel like you'd want to end, where you feel so strongly and so sad about something that you want to even end your own life, or you think about it, or you want to hurt yourself, or you just don't know what to do. And sometimes people, even at that point, will like try to like say something or do something to like make it seem not as important, even though to you it might be the world's most important thing at the time, even if that feeling goes away. So I feel like it's just expressing your deepest emotions and your deepest thoughts to so many people when they don't actually take it seriously, or when they try to downplay it, and it kind of just adds to the hurt that you're already going through. And I mean, like, being young is difficult. We've all been young, and you know, it's where we're really vulnerable. So if you don't have someone to talk to, and just that you can actually trust, each time you talk to somebody, your trust just gets smaller and smaller, and sometimes you almost completely lose it all to where you feel like you can't trust a single person. So that's why I've held back a lot from talking to people at sometimes.
Yeah. Thank you, Armando. I super appreciate your vulnerability and willingness to like just tell your truth and help folks to understand that. How about for you, Ramiro?
I would have to say that one thing like that would make me not open a lot more would be trust. Like, if I can't really fully trust you, like, I won't tell you anything. I won't. But besides trust, it would be more like um how do I say this? Being there. Like, if you're not there all the time, um you're not worried about me every single part of my life, then I won't tell you everything. There's some things I would keep from you, and I rather not say.
So like Ramiro, just to make sure I understand too, like, I mean, I hear you saying the trust piece, but like the being there like consistently over a long period of time, like being there all the time, right? And not just being there some of the time. Is that like the important part of what you're trying to say there?
Yeah. So, like, say like my father, and he's like in and out all the time, not really there consistently. I won't tell him everything. There's certain things I would keep from him. But like, if you're there, like my mother, who's always there worrying about me, then I'll tell her everything. stuff like that I'll tell.
Right on. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ramiro, for being willing to share that. How about for you, Angel?
Basically what I was gonna say, everyone, Mondo and Ramiro just said. Because me and Ramiro share the same dad and the same mom, so we basically feel the same way. And like Armando said, like, well, what's the point of people, while you trying to explain to people and tell them everything when they're not gonna like be there and acknowledge you and listen to you. So that's they took what I was gonna say, but
Right on. Good deal. Fair enough. Yeah, Ramiro and Angel are brothers. Spoiler alert. So, fair enough. Okay, how about for you, Iran?
For me, it has to do with like gut feeling. Like, what is my gut feeling telling me if I should trust this person or not, you know?
And can you talk a little bit more about it, Iran? Like either how you've learned to trust it, or like what do you think is what do you think your gut is like figuring out?
Like with new people, it's like first impression, you know? Like how they act, like it's all in psychology, you know? You gotta like notice the body language, you notice like their speech, the way they talk, and like if they share their own ideas, like what are their ideas, intentions, you know?
Would it be like fair to say, if I'm understanding you right, Iran, like if adults are like actually being vulnerable human beings with you, then that makes you feel like a little bit more open. But if they're kind of like closed, or they already know, or they're like acting like they have the answers, then that's like a harder person for you to trust. Okay. Okay. Right on. Thank you. So this next question, man, and you guys like let it rip, you know, let it rip. You can like take it out on the adults on this call. This question I'm going to ask you for all the adults who haven't always been doing a good job listening. This is a place where you can like let some of that out, because what I want to ask you is, what do you wish more adults understood about the challenges that you face during this period of time in your life? You know, I know that from our own conversations and relationships that there's a lot of different pressures that y'all have to navigate. And you deal with a lot of adults who have power over you, right? They can like impact your life in all these ways. They can make you do stuff. They can like give you consequences if you don't do what they want. And so, right, there's a group of adults on this call who want to understand and try to help us have a community that does better in being supportive for y'all. And so that's really just the context of the question. What do you wish more adults understood about the challenges you faced during this time in your life? What do you wish adults understood in general? And you can just share as much of whatever's on your heart, and I'll pass it to you, Armando.
So, you know, we're all people. We're all different. And growing up and being a kid is like one of the hardest things ever. Like, it kind of sounds obvious because you don't really know, so you kind of just take in everything you see. But every kid is also different. Like, every kid is so different, and I feel like that's one of the things we have to remember. We could all go through the like similar exact same things, but we still somehow find a way to like have our own personalities and be unique. And that's one of the beauties of being a child, the possibilities. But it's also terrifying at the same time, because from what I remember is that every little trauma and every little pain that I went through as a child would just build up and add up. So I'd go to school, you know, I'd get bullied at school. I went to a school with like a richer side of town, and my whole life I've been struggling with my mom. So, you know, living at my family's houses and moving out of places every 6 months and 3 months, and, you know, moving to different states because we have to live with other people, or moving to different cities because we have to live with other people. So it's just everything all at once when you're a kid, going to school, getting bullied, you know, the teachers don't even really pay attention to you. Like, I was really hyper as a kid and I couldn't stop talking. So the teachers would get mad at me for talking too much, and then I'd get in trouble with the teachers. So then I go home on the bus, and then I have to walk home, so I'm tired, and then I go home to my mom being at work still and having to find like a family member to take care of me, and then going home to my mom and dad always yelling, and my dad, getting crazy and making me feel scared. So it's just like sometimes it feels like you can't get out of the pain and the hardness. So some things might not seem the biggest deal to adults, but to a kid, I feel like sometimes you just gotta tell them like you're okay. Like explain to them the pain so they can process it better. Like, when I was getting bullied, it took me years and years for someone to tell me I was gonna be okay. But by that point, I already felt so horrible about myself. It took years and years of seeing like my own father yelling at me and, maybe drinking too much and doing whatever he was doing for himself. And no one ever told me that it was going to be okay, So just seeing these two people that are supposed to be like my gods, my role models, my world, just like making me feel so horrible, just was another pain I held in my heart. And being poor and feeling like nobody sees me and no one pays attention to me, just like everything just felt like life was really never good. Even though I always had food and I always had shelter, like I would tell people I'm depressed and then be like, why, your life is perfect. But there's so many things in life that can make life feel like hell, even though you have food and water and everything. So just all that going on as a kid can really last forever. It can go into your adulthood, it could go into your early teens, it could go into high school, and just make you feel like you're not yourself and make you feel a little non-human from all the things you have to endure and go through. So yeah, that's what I have.
Armando, thank you so much. Thank you so much, man, for being vulnerable and just sharing your truth with us here this morning. I know it's so good for folks to hear that. And just want to say thank you. How about for you, Ramiro?
I would say that, like what he said, we're all different. We're gonna experience kind of the same thing, but not all of it. We're not gonna all battle through it the same. We're all gonna have our different ways of coping with it. And what I wish some adults would understand is that no way, like the ways that we cope with things are not going to be wrong. They might be different, but they're not wrong. They might say some, because from my experience, some of the adults told me that the way I was doing things, the way I was keeping myself locked away was wrong. But I don't think that is. I think that you were just waiting for the right time for someone to come by and you could just let it all out. Yeah, I think that's it.
That's so powerful, Ramiro. I heard and the ways that we cope, survive aren't, and you need the adults that are on here to hear that. And I just want you to really hear that. I'm grateful for that share. How about for you, Angel?
For me, I'm with Ramiro and Armando, and I have some of my own too. I think for me, it's really like the teachers and my parents, because a couple months ago I was doing the work and my teacher wasn't grading it, and he would tell my mom I don't take advantage of tutoring and all kinds of other stuff, but he never told us about tutoring. And I didn't know it was after school, and that when school was like at lunch or something, he never told us. He just said we don't take advantage of tutoring. So and then when my mom would hear about it, she would always yell at me and be like, why isn't the work turned in? Like, he says you don't take advantage of tutoring. And it's hard to explain to her when your teacher is telling her one thing and I'm trying to tell her another. So that's that's what's hard for me.
And like what I hear and all that, Angel, and so you tell me if this sounds right or not quite, is like adults kind of like making assumptions about your intentions and effort without even like checking in with you to see like what you understand, or like adults just taking for granted that they've like explained everything clear to you, when maybe you have. Does that seem
Sorry,
right? Is that kind of get at what you're talking about?
you cut out at the end. I didn't really hear the last part, but yeah, that's how I feel about teachers. Like, because and adults, like people say stuff, and sometimes they don't check in to make sure that's the right thing, and it's just hard for me to explain that to my mom. So,
Right on. Yeah, I think that's great. That's really important for all of us to hear. Thank you, Angel, for sharing that. How about for you, Iran?
What was
Uh,
what was
so,
the
so it
beginning of the
was. What do you wish that the adults understood about the challenges that you're facing during this time of your life? What do you wish that adults understood?
oh that adults are crucial for like childhood development and everything. Like they are our fuel. And sometimes the ones that don't understand, like the adults that don't understand that being a child is like really like it's really dangerous, and like they try to like they themselves are like not willing to be the fuel for the child, then like yeah, and then like there's consequences, you know, like either that kid can grow up to be like the world's next biggest criminal. Like it's crucial, you know.
Right on. That's a super good message. Um, Brothers, y'all are awesome. Y'all kicked butt this morning. Really brave. A lot of nerve to get up with all these folks you don't know. I'm grateful for y'all. This was a big gift. This is a big giveaway that y'all gave. So I just want to honor you for that. Let's do a checkout, and then I'm going to transition us. And if y'all, you're of course welcome to stay. I'm sure you probably need to go to school. So let's do our checkout. So we'll say our name, 2 feelings that you can feel in your body right now. And who are you grateful for? Somebody that you want to give thanks for in your life. If you got somebody or something you want to give thanks for in your life. And I'll pass it to you, Armando, and that's how we'll check out.
Armando, I'm feeling pretty joyful. I didn't want to say happy just because I said it. And I'm feeling, um, I don't know what the word is, but like looking forward to the future. Like, looking forward to the future. It's just really, really relieving to like hear that people are actually wanting to help out the younger people, because I know it's like some people say it's not important, but it's like one of the most important things out there in my opinion. And sorry, what was the question again? I got a little nervous.
Somebody that you want to give thanks for. Somebody or something that you
Oh,
want to give thanks for in your life.
well, I'd like to give thanks for those few people that did stand up for me and that did believe in me when I was little, because even though they don't know it, like, for example, just some of the people would be like my mom, Mr. Wonderlick from Choya groups, like Michael, Aaron, one of the like people that used to be in Bushman, Aaron too, and just for being there, for giving me a chance to like help myself instead of them trying to grab the driver's seat and like push me over, for them to just help me with what I got and help me understand that, my life is really important and I do have great things as long as I put my mind to it. So I'm like eternally grateful for all you guys and Michael and everybody. So yeah, I'm out and I'll pass it to Angel.
People that I want to give thanks to is mainly my mom. Like sometimes she like she says that I don't appreciate her, like, because I don't say it, but in deep inside, I actually do. And I want to give thanks to, like, mostly everyone I said that was in Boys to Men for helping me, and um, one thing taking me camping for my first time and actually being there to talk to me. And with that amount, pass it to her.
You
Ramiro, I
pass
mean.
it to Ramiro?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I was not sure, so I was just gonna wait until. Okay. Anyways, I feel. Wait, it was two feelings, and then what was the last question?
Somebody or something you're grateful for.
Okay. So, I feel very grounded, feel good, and kind of thankful for being here. A couple people that I want to thank are my parents and um Wonderlick and Michael for actually helping me out through everything I've been through. It's been really great. I know I just met Michael, but he's been really good. He's been an amazing mentor and a friend. Um, yeah, and I'm out, and I'm gonna pass it to Ivan, right? Or I, I can't pronounce his name.
Iran.
Iran.
Thank you, Ramiro. My name's Iran, and I'm feeling really open-minded for like opening up and discussing like this topic and all. And I trust, like, I would like to thank you, Michael, because like of all the opportunities you have given me, like all of 2020 and 2019, and like the rest of Boys to Men, for opportunities like this. I'm in, or I'm out.
Right on. Thank you guys. Love you guys. Thank you for giving of yourselves this morning and making a big difference for other folks by just sharing this stuff with adults. So we're going to transition here to the next part. I just want to lift up quickly, and encourage folks to really feel and reflect on what the boys just gave to us and shared with us. And I think if you've been here for the last few days, you can see really clearly how what they're sharing ties into a lot of the themes that we've been talking about and are going to be talking about here through the rest of the day. The importance of honoring the youth's leadership, of honoring their experience, and of letting them inform us, of consistency, of showing up regularly, of expanding our mind about what makes a mentor and what makes somebody one of the safe adults in your life, I think is really important as we think about how we're going to build and expand this in our communities. So I'll go ahead and transition this over to you, Belen.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you all for that very moving circle and that session. We really wanted to hear, about how adults need to show up. And so thank you for providing that and being vulnerable with us. It's very moving. In looking at how we can move forward in improving outcomes for young men, masculine identified youth, if you were here on Monday, you heard some of the data around, those that we interviewed, the focus groups that we had, and some of the surveys that were conducted. And one of the themes that clearly came up is around systems and how juvenile justice system, law enforcement, and even schools have a punitive approach to engaging young men and how this exacerbates and creates further harm. And so to really unpack that theme with you all today, we invited three panelists with us today to kind of facilitate a discussion and a dialogue around this. And first we have Marcia, co-founder and director of Alianza for Youth Justice. Marcia, can you wave? I think, yeah, hi. Welcome. Marcia is executive director, as I said, of Alianza for Youth Justice, and principal of Nochtin, Equal Justice for All. She's an adjunct MSW policy professor and author. At the Alianza, she directs the coalition's efforts to amplify visibility and advocacy of Chicanx and Latinx to transform youth injustice systems with long-term solutions rooted in cultura, comunidad, and healing. Welcome, Marcia. Next, we have another panelist, Isaac Villegas-Durgin. Isaac, can you wave hello? Hi. Isaac is a health education specialist at COPE. He was born and raised in the city of South Tucson to Mexican parents from Sonora and Michoacan. Isaac grew up in a time when drugs and gangs ran the barrio. Dropping out of high school at 16 led him to a life on the streets until he had seen too many friends OD and get killed and wanted to escape that same fate. In 2003, Isaac started working in a group home with people who have brain injuries and ended up getting involved with different harm reduction programs like the COPE's Amigos Apoyando Amigos and Pima County Life Point program. Around the same time, his opposition to the Show Me Your Papers Prop 200 compelled him to campaign for local politics. Isaac later became a coordinator for different programs such as the YWCA, House of Neighborly Service, in the city of South Tucson, a prison reentry and tattoo removal program called Second Chance. Today, he is still proud to call Tucson home and is always looking for ways to support his family and community. Welcome, Isaac. Next, we have Anna Harper-Guerrero. Anna, can you wave hello? Hi. Thanks for joining us. She is Executive Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer at Emerge, Center Against Domestic Abuse in Tucson, and is a faculty associate at the Arizona State University School of Social Work in Tucson. Anna led the team at Emerge, responsible for design and implementation of the men's education program, and is responsible for oversight of this project. Prior to joining the Emerge team, Anna was a special staff assistant to Pima County Board of Supervisors Chairman Richard Elias. Prior to her work with him, she served as a volunteer coordinator and then crisis services director at the Southern Arizona Center Against Sexual Assault. As you can see, these three individuals I didn't even begin to get all of their bios in, but if you got the program from Michael, you can read more about them there. So thank you to, again, the three of you for joining us in this conversation and diving deeper into this theme around systems and how systems harm young men. I'm reflecting on the prior conversation and how, what I heard from that conversation is, young men and masculine identified youth, they need spaces to be vulnerable, to be heard, and be heard without judgment, and to really listen to what they're sharing. And our systems just aren't set up to do that with them. And so I wanted to go through some of the questions I've sent to all of you, actually to the three panelists, and let's just begin the dialogue. And for others in the audience, participate in the chat box. If you have other questions you'd like to pose to our panelists, please put in there. If you want to share your thoughts, put them in the chat box. And so the first question I want to unpack with the three of you is, how have systems, as your personal life experience or in your professional work experience, how have systems harmed young men and male-identified youth? And Isaac, I think I'm going to start with you, and then we'll kind of round robin this.
All right. Hello, everybody. Just being part of this, I feel kind of like emotional about it, and it's amazing. It's like the stuff I've been like wanting to see with youth in my community is like happening. It's like that fills me with like this gratitude that y'all don't even know, man. Iran, I heard Iran say as a young kid, he talked with somebody and he felt the weight of the world off his shoulders. I did not experience that till I was like 24 years old. And I remember that experience. But it was because I never had nobody like that. My mom was also my rock. But I lived in a home where I saw violence and abuse from my father towards me and my mother. So I dropped out at 16 and I left. I left my house. I joined a gang. My mentors and who was there for me was a gang. And to hear kids have that space now and what's going on now, just it's overwhelming for me. It's very powerful. And I feel like the work I've done for the last 20 years is like, oh my God, that stuff actually like worked or like did something. I don't know. But I feel very, very grateful to be a part of this and to be here. So, right, the whole thing of how these systems are not good for young men, young boys. It was like that for me from the beginning. Elementary, my dad, very machista from Mexico. My mom couldn't like leave the house without like passing it through my father and things like that. And I grew up around that. I think about other things that were very toxic as me growing up. It was like I grew up with somebody who was like, you're crying, I'm gonna give you something to cry about. You know what I mean? And that was how it was. And I held everything in for many, many years. And eventually, I let this stuff out and it came out like a fire hydrant. Like this stuff came out of me. This stuff got me in trouble, all these things. But it was always in schools. People never talked about those things at Mission View. I went to Mission View here in Tucson. I went to Wakefield and I went to Pueblo High School. I dropped out of Pueblo. I was court ordered to go to the Tucson Urban League. They had like a alternative school back then. And when I got to this school, and I remember thinking about this back then, every gang in Tucson had a kid there. And they sent me there and I was like, how is this supposed to help us? Like, I just met everybody else who's doing all the same things I'm doing, and we're not really getting any help or trying to be better. We're just doing what we do. And I was talking about this with somebody yesterday. When summer was coming up, they took us bowling. I don't even remember what we did. We did an activity, and after that activity was over, we went to some of the staff's house and we like drank beers and like smoked pot with this staff that's like supposed to be like helping us not do that stuff that we've been doing. I remember like seeing these people every day, for months, and they're part of my life. And after that party, I never saw these people again. Like that was it. It was like goodbye forever, adult that's supposed to be here for me. And like, dang, hearing everybody talk in this reminded me of that. I'm like, oh my God, like I could have had that help, but it never showed up. Man, I wrote notes and everything, and like right now, like I feel hot. Like I'm like, what the heck, man? But I just feel like all these emotions coming out of me, and I apologize for that. But I don't know. I'll pass it on to somebody else, y'all. But like, man, I'm so grateful for this. It's like y'all don't even know. Like, thank you.
Thank you for being here, Isaac, and thank you for sharing in that way. We appreciate it. Anna, I'm going to go to you next. And if you want to talk about, from a systems perspective, again, how systems have harmed young men and male-identified youth, how you've seen that happen in community.
Sure. Thank you so much. Good morning, Isaac. Good morning, Marcia. I'm happy to be here with you both. And I want to just thank the young men that shared. and who took risks in doing so. And you know, being on Zoom is awkward enough, but then to be here with a bunch of people you don't know, and to give of yourself in that way is really beautiful. And Isaac, I just like invite you to lean into it, because these young men are watching. Don't apologize. So, I mean, I guess the thing that was on my mind this morning, you know, I had some anxiety about being here because I really wanted to say things that mattered. And I think in order to do that, I also have to take risks. And so I want to just like preface my comments with saying that nothing I say is an indictment of individual human beings that work in systems, but it is a commentary on the flaws of the system and the ways that we haven't interrogated or thought critically about that. I was thinking a lot this morning, and I'm not sure how many folks were here for Monday's session, but Michael shared a really important graphic that just kind of gives us a model to understand the cycle of consequences that happen for young boys, and sort of the root of that cycle being socialization processes that teach boys not to cry, to be unforgiving and relentless in their masculinity as a way to access power and status. And how over time, it really teaches boys about, you know, not asking for help, not being vulnerable. And when you layer over that just sort of basic socialization that most young boys, if not all, get in our communities, then you layer in poverty, you layer in cycles of addiction that exist within communities and families. It's a sure pathway to the juvenile justice system, right? We lay out the red carpet for so many brown and Black boys straight to the juvenile justice system. And when they arrive in that system that greets them with open arms, what they find is not understanding about that cycle, right? Like we've all been talking about this is our third day. And everybody in all of these Zoom sessions that I've been in, nobody's sort of like argued with that point, right? We all understand those dynamics. We understand how that creates the individual experiences that young boys and young men are having in our communities. But yet the system or the structure that is set up to receive those young men operates as if those conditions are not present, and immediately assigns personal responsibility to those young boys and men for what landed them there. And I think that that's a major problem within the system, if not the problem within the system. Is that it operates, and it seems to be just sort of really invested in a belief that these young boys have to be punished for the conditions that they did not create that gave them the one-way ticket there. And I think that that is one of the major ways that our systems harm young men. They're not set up to address the root causes of the issues that brought them there. And in that way, you can view that system, the juvenile justice system, and this overarching entity as the sort of sacrificing of our youth. We sacrifice them. We get rid of them. I recall sitting in a space with Marcia years and years and years ago when our juvenile court system was attempting to do their JDAI initiative. And we were talking about the disproportionate numbers of brown and Black youth locked up in detention. And why that was, we were sitting in a room full of people who work with the court system. And I remember it clear as day that one of the men, and I want to make a point later about sort of masculinity and socialization, but one of the men in the room, who I think was like a lead probation officer person, said, essentially, I said, you can't tell me that the answer to this question is that brown and Black youth are just more violent. You can't tell me that and think that I'm gonna believe it. And he argued vehemently that that in fact was true, and that it wasn't anybody's fault but these kids' fault that they ended up there, and then the numbers that they were there. And that took all the air out of the room in that moment, because here we were in this grant process that the court signed up for to really look at this, and what we were confronted with was a pristine argument contrary to the work that we had been put there to do. And so when I think of, you know, everything that Isaac just said, I couldn't have said better, that yeah, when boys have the experiences that all of the young men today named, that the youth in that documentary that some of us watch named, right? Abuse, violence, rejection, drugs, hurt, pain, they extract relief from their community for that pain. And then we punish them for that. And I think that, and one of the things, this is my last comment, I think I've heard often from folks in the juvenile justice system, well, we need places to send these kids to get help. We need more resources. There aren't enough resources. And while that might be true, right? That was one of the themes that came out of the assessment, that we need more resources for these programs. But we know they exist. We got people kids dancing in the street on the South Side. We got Boys to Men. We got all of these mentoring programs signed up in here that are working to deliver those good messages, the right messages. But the problem is that the system has control over those young men and undermines those messages that these programs are giving to these boys. And so we have a real problem and conflict there, that the system undoes all the good work that the programs are doing by telling the young boys that it's their fault, that they are flawed, and that they are destined for a life in prison or death. And so that is my last comment. I will leave it there. I'll pass to Marcia. Marcia, I love you. I'm so glad to see your face.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I'm humbled to be here. As part of my tradition, I'm I've been burning a little bit of California sage. And I just want to acknowledge the ancestors, both the ones that you all are sitting in, you know, the land that you all belong to, and the people that came before all of you. And then for the people where I'm here, you know, in California. I'm really, well, the first thing I want to do too is just acknowledge the young men. Our young people are sacred. We're all sacred. And we all have a sacred purpose. You know, working intergenerationally is our teachings. And so I'm really happy to see this diversity here and to see that people are listening as well as providing support and love. And so I'll start there. This is a very important question and area of work that has been in my life now for about maybe 25, 30 years. And I just adore my community in Tucson. My son is currently still there at the U of A. It touches my ancestry, my own personal ancestry that comes from Sonora and the Tohono O'odham people of that area. So when I arrived in Tucson, in Pima County, on any given day, there were 200 kids in detention. And when I left 5 years later, after we had implemented 2 different models, the JDI model and the Burns Institute model, we were down to 60. But I knew that we could have been down even further, and we could have, and to this day, that we could even close down juvenile hall. The way that San Francisco is going to close down by 2021, and here in Santa Clara, we're saying we're going to close our juvenile hall by 2025. Now, JDI taught us to look at the numbers, And what we found when we looked at the numbers was that the majority, even though 35% of the population of kids, boys, are Latino, Mexicano, Chicano, indigenous, and then there's the Native American, and then there's also the Black youth, that is predominantly these brown and Black youth that are sitting in detention, 75, 80%. And so we have to name it, you know, and people wouldn't name it. And so there was always this push and pull about the system, number one, wanting to exist. Myself as a social worker, I'm taught to work myself out of a job. The system isn't taught that. In fact, the system is about aggrandizement. You know, they built a juvenile hall that can hold 320 kids. There was almost like an embarrassment to drop those numbers. And then there was a pushback to even let go of staff, judges, probation officers. So when I think about how has the system harmed our young people, on the one hand, it's these structures from hundreds of years. We only have to go back into our history. Our ancestors didn't use cages. Our ancestors did not use cages to hold our kids in any kind of detention. They had a lot of beautiful teachings that were reaching back to bring forward. Our children should have access to those teachings. They were beautiful. They gave us names, beautiful sacred names like my name, Tlacapantzin. And so we through these systems, number one, we dehumanize them. And we continue the assimilation, acculturation, kill the Indian, save the man, and do that so that they don't know who they are and where they come from. We detach them from their humanity and from their DNA that connects them to that drumbeat, that's the heartbeat. And when we do that, they just continue to float, wanting to catch on, grab onto something, even if it's not their own. And so doing this work reminded me that one, there was the work to dismantle this system that was really meant to hold our kids. Because if you look back at the history shows us there was the genocide and the slavery. It's the undiscussed slavery of our own people, our own indigenous people. That's who we are. That happened even before Black slavery arrived. It was the caste system that told us that white was the most supreme person, and then indigenous and Black people were on the furthest spectrum, and they were the heathens. They were the you know, the worst people on earth. They weren't even considered human. And so if we look at that history and we teach this history to our kids, they understand then the purpose of the punishment of this system. To punish, because kids, through the Puritan value system, kids are born with sin. And yet in our values are that our children are sacred. We're sacred, and we have a sacred purpose. And how do we nurture them into their sacred purpose, as well as how do they nurture themselves into the responsibility to community? So if we're detached and not connected, then we're constantly looking for that. And we'll find it where it's best, where it soothes us, it comforts us. And for a lot of our boys, I actually was, as a young person, I loved gangs. Back in those days, it was the cholas, man, and I loved their sass. I loved that they refused to give up who they were. I love that. In the midst of all this world that didn't want to accept who we were because we were brown, I loved the way they stood up for being brown. But yet, you know, then came this other piece of violence and drugs. And so, you know, gangs is actually, when you look, whenever I ask people, what do you think about Latinos in the juvenile justice system? The first thing they think of is gangs, and they think of undocumented kids. Well, to tell you the truth, all over this country, when you look at the data, That's the least kids sitting in detention. It's not about gangs, and it's not about being undocumented. The two main reasons most kids sit in detention all over this country are violations of probation and warrants, making adults angry. And they're low-level offenses. They're not, I asked for the longest time when I worked at the Burns Institute, we did surveys all over the country, and we would ask probation officers and judges and law enforcement, why do they think that the most kids sit in detention, kids of color? And they would say, violent crime. And then we would show them their own local data. And their own local data would say that it was for low-level offenses. To this day, there was a San Francisco Chronicle series last year in 2019 by Joaquin Palomino and Jill Jill Tucker. And their series shows that the majority of kids that sit in detention all over this country are low and medium risk kids. They're not even high risk kids, but yet it's okay. We as adults, it's okay that they're sitting behind bars in these cages when they don't even need to be there. So all that to say that yes, we intentionally harm by detaining. We know there's all this research that shows that our kids that get detained and go deeper into the system will have worse outcomes, won't be able to get jobs, won't be able to get their education, have hard relationships with family, have a hard time connecting to their emotions and their well-being. It's not just physically their well-being, it's also their spiritual well-being, right? We can't forget that part. How do they reconnect to their spirit? And so I'm really happy to be here. I'll leave it there. I know that there's a couple more questions, but I'm really pleased to be able to share the little that I can contribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Isaac. I'm gonna move forward. I know we knew coming into this is just gonna be such a rich discussion, and I thought maybe I'll go in with 5 questions and we'll get through them all. I've gone through one, and I hope to get through another, and then we can transition. But this is such a rich discussion. I hate to interrupt, but you all clearly talked about how systems continue to harm young men, masculine identified youth. And I'm wondering, one of the questions I posed to you before our session today was, how can systems be reformed, deconstructed, reconstructed, reimagined? And I'm even struggling with maybe there's no system. That is not even the right approach to begin with. But we still have to reconcile the fact that those systems exist and have existed for such a long time. So in thinking about, again, how systems can be reformed, reconstructed, reimagined, I'll start with you, Marcia, and then we'll go to Anna and then to Isaac.
It's right up my alley, this question. And I have to say that this beautiful diversity that you have here is the right group to be asking that question. I believe strongly that those most impacted, so directly lived, experienced individuals need to be sitting at the table in order to answer that question. There is a huge, all over this country, there's a movement, a very strong movement to defund, downsize, and reimagine everything from looking at the 911 and revamping what that needs to look like, and that it comes from community. There's a wonderful organization, Coalition for Youth Justice in Los Angeles, that has been working very tirelessly on developing a brand new 911 system. And then there's places in the East Coast, on the West Coast, that have been pushing their whole juvenile justice system to live in the public health departments, because this is a public health issue. It is not a juvenile justice or criminal justice issue. probation officers, judges, they're all trained very much in a one way, you know, you only have a hammer and a nail. And so these solutions are going to have to come from our young people that have been in the system, their families. It's going to be intergenerational. And we have to have the full gamut, you know, our elders, our faith groups, to be able to respond. Each community is unique, but the way in which this country has led criminal justice and youth injustice has brought us to a place where it's so astronomically costly that we're taking money away from the places where we absolutely need it, which is, you know, recreation, education, healthcare, housing, you know? And so when you look at the cost here in the Bay Area, it's $500 a day. And when you see how much it costs for a full year, you could pay for 3 BAs, you know, education. So it's no wonder that our families in the most, there's a woman, brilliant, a professor, Kelly Lytle Hernandez, who's doing this fabulous work out of Los Angeles around the bail system. And she plots where all the bail has come from in Los Angeles for years. It's all coming from Black and brown communities. So no wonder our kids don't go to college. They don't have the money. Their parents, they can't buy cars. They can't buy houses because they're paying for this astronomical bail. So anyway, the point being then, yes. And I refuse to say reform because 25 years of reform, you only have to look at Pima County's juvenile court to see that reform, which they, you know, bank themselves on wanting to do reform, they could have been closed by now. And the cost of what it costs to keep that system open, when you look at the cost and where we're taking the money from, it's just not worth it. The outcomes are not worth it. We seem to do a one-size-fits-all approach for our kids when our kids specifically need healing-centered and culturally relevant services and programming. And this system refuses to reach out to the ones, you know, we have a Chicanos por la Causa here, right in Tucson, and they've never reached out to them to give them a contract. It's unbearable, unacceptable, inappropriate. These are organizations that have done so well. And when you plot where the kids come from, their neighborhoods, and where the services are, it's never in the same community and neighborhood. And the kids don't look like the people that are serving them. And you have to do that. It's absolutely necessary that who serves these young people have to look like them and be from the neighborhoods because they know what's going on. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Anna, can you respond to the question?
Sure. I mean, I echo everything Marcia said. I absolutely wholeheartedly believe this is a public health crisis in our community. And unless we return to the tenets of that approach, we won't see it be different. And that means extracting all the resources out of that harmful system and giving it back to the communities that need it so that these programs can flourish. I think the thing, rather than repeat points that Marcia made, I'd like to layer on to the discussion. I'm gonna get in all your questions, Belen. I wanna layer into the discussion a commentary about masculinity and socialization of masculine identities. Because I think one of the things that's really important is to understand the role that systems also play in the socialization process of masculine identities and how it exacerbates consequences and sets boys and young men up for the consequences and then tells them they're personally responsible for those consequences. I think that's really important to name. And additionally, that there was a question asked on Monday about mental models for mentoring, right? What are your mental models for mentoring or something like that? And I've been thinking a lot about the probation officers that that exist in the juvenile justice system, and many of them are males, and I really worry about the harm being created when I think about the ways that, you know, they on their own have been socialized to be a particular way, and then you layer that with a law enforcement identity that tells them they have the right to demean and dehumanize because they are a law enforcement person, right? And then they're interacting with some of the most vulnerable young people in our communities, like further exacerbating that socialization process. And it has nothing to do with respect. It has nothing to do with sort of law, right? This is the law, you're on probation, you got to follow these rules. It has nothing to do with that. Don't misunderstand the dynamic that is happening between people in the juvenile justice system and our most vulnerable youth. Don't misunderstand that dynamic. They are teaching and reinforcing harmful models, harmful mental models about masculine identities. They're not teaching respect and adherence to rules. They're teaching to dehumanize and to extract vengeance on someone who is hurting because they are more vulnerable, because they are less than. I really think that that's important to layer in here. It's really insidious, and it's within the system, and that's like lifted up within the system. So again, this isn't an indictment of individual people, but it is an indictment of the system, and what it is doing to young people and adults, right? That's not healthy either for adults to operate from that way, because then they go home, and if they have a family, believe they are doing the same things in their home. I know it because they end up in our program, and we're talking to them about how to build safety in their home. So I just wanted to layer that in, and I try to scandalize all the conversations that Michael invites me to. So I appreciate y'all hearing me out and struggling with that. Isaac?
Thank you, Marcia and Anna. Thank you very much. So I'm gonna talk about. I have a little niece who's 5 years old, and she just started kindergarten, and she lives in the house that I grew up in the city of South Tucson. She goes to the same elementary school I went to, Mission View Elementary School, and you know, for this part of the question, I'm gonna talk about Mission View. You know, she's doing the online school and all of that. And one of the things that blew my mind about my school, my elementary school now, when they send parents like, you know, paperwork to read, you know, like for whatever, you know, I don't know, like stuff that the parents need to know. Mission View sends that paperwork in Yoeme language, in Otam language, in Spanish, and in English. When my sister showed me that, I was like, oh my, what? Like, no way, like was this real? And, you know, things like that, and seeing it, I think that's gonna be a big deal to help our youth and our young men and our young women. Another thing that my little niece does at her elementary school, I was there watching her, and they're doing breathing techniques. They're doing yoga. They're teaching these kids how to process their feelings and have more words to process their feelings. Yeah, my mind was blown. Like, you know, I'll do like yoga stuff, and my little niece will be like, oh, you're doing yoga? And she'll come and start doing, you know, yoga poses that she's learning in kindergarten. And I'm like, oh my God. And I think like, man, if I would have had that back then, like, you know, who knows what things could have been. And just seeing those things there at Mission View Elementary, they have like everybody looks like the kids that are there. They have lessons from indigenous people will come in and do lessons on their indigenous cultures to the kids in the school, you know? I mean, we had folklorico, we had things like that when I was in elementary, but it wasn't to the extent of actually knowing these different cultures, man. I grew up in my neighborhood, it was like Otam and Yoeme, like that was like all my friends were either you know, first generation or they were here, and those were all the people that I grew up around. It makes me really hopeful for the future. I feel like I've been out of the loop a while for this type of work. I've been involved more with adults. My office is in a methadone clinic, so I get to work with all the broken guys, a lot of them that I know personally, and one of the things I actually wanted to say here is I got a lot of homeboys who have been to prison, who are part of all of that. And a lot of these guys, you know, like I'll talk to them about certain things and they'll say like, yo, man, I've never heard a man talk the way you are talking, right? Like things like that. And these guys, they want to mentor kids. They want to do that. But they are like, I don't even think I'm necessarily ready for that. You know what I mean? And these guys, I'm like, I want to help them to be able to do that and to help them be on that path. So these guys that were broken, that had these tough childhoods, could be some of the ones that are doing mentoring to our kids. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, and then that's difficult too, man. I remember when I was working at the Arizona Children's Association, they gave me a job. I'm doing groups with kids and I'm doing all these things. Then all of a sudden, something from my record from the 90s comes up, right? 10 years later, they stopped me from working with the kids. They're like, Isaac, you can't go and be with the kids anymore. Something came up on your record. And I'm like, dude, like, I did the time for this. I paid restitution. I did everything the system asked of me. And here I am being punished again, you know? And I think those things for young men and for youth in the juvenile justice system, it's like, we got to get rid of that, man. Like, how is that even possible? I still have trouble with some of that. I have not been in trouble since 1999. And like in certain points of my life, that stuff comes back up and I have to explain myself. And I'm like, what? Like, dude, like, I don't want to deal with that. I want to work with the kids. I want to work with youth. I want to work with these people. And all of a sudden I'm having to prove once again that I'm worthy to even be able to do that. And yeah, man, like, gosh, that would be something that I think would help everybody out. You know, getting rid of that punitive, those things that are like, I still don't get it. Like, what is the point of that? Like, have I not proven to y'all? You know, but just seeing what's happening now and hearing you all talk and hearing what you all are doing is like, God, this is like the best thing that I've done in quite a long time. And I thank you all for that. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Isaac, again, for sharing. Thank you, Ana. Thank you, Marcia. I just want to make it, does anybody, Marcia, Ana, Isaac, any remaining thoughts, anything else you want to share before we transition? I know we're way over time, Michael. I'm just going to go with it. We'll figure it out. But this is such a rich and important discussion, and I think really feeds into our next piece. But okay. Well, thank you both, all of you, three of you, for sharing and for being with us today. I'm so glad to be part of this discussion with you all. For me, this discussion really, as I said, informs this next step. If you were with us on Monday, you probably saw us go into these Google Jamboards to begin to plan out some strategies. And so we're going to invite you again to participate in a Google Jamboard to begin to identify, you know, when we think about these systems, where are there opportunities to make those changes? And so I'm glad we ended on that conversation of how we not reform, but deconstruct and reimagine how systems or non-systems can support young people, young men, and masculine identified youth. And so I'm gonna share my screen and turn it over to Sarah so we can do an overview of this, of the Google Jamboard, in case you weren't here on Monday.
Thank you, Belen. Just thank you to the panelists again. I am feeling so activated by your words. So I mean, I feel the activation in me, and so I'm excited we're excited to hear how you were all activated by the conversation that we just had, and be able to capture your thoughts on the Jamboard. So Belen, if you can share, and then we can do a really quick overview again for those that are new and may not be savvy or aware of how to use Jamboards. On the top, you have the frames that you can scroll through. We have a series of questions, and we're going. You can move through them as you wish. On the left side, you have your tools that you can use to document. We're gonna just keep you to the sticky note. You can change the colors. You add whatever text you want in there, because we really, really want to capture your perspective on this theme connected to systems, and then a public health approach to address the issues that we're seeing in this moment in time. And so, Belen, do we want to give about 15 minutes?
Let's give about 15 minutes for the Google Jamboard. We will come back, do a quick debrief, and then we'll go on to the break.
Yeah, and every room will have a facilitator that can support you through moving through the questions, and also with tech on the Jamboards.
So we're actually going to go into breakout rooms, and I'm going to open up the rooms now, so you'll see a prompt in your screen to join the room. I'm going to do that now.
Welcome back.
Hey, I
So-
forgot to share, Sarah, really quick. I forgot to share with my
Yes.
group that they can still fill it in after
Yes.
the fact. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Frank, for emphasizing that. Yes, so you have access to the Jamboard. Please, we encourage you to provide responses and feedback to the questions in those Jamboards. We will be utilizing the Jamboards, your responses, to inform next steps to move this work forward, to create an action plan to move this work forward. So we really would love to hear your perspective on how we do that. So I just want to give some space to the facilitators. Were there any like screaming themes that you heard in your sessions before we transition into the next conversation? And Frank, I can start with you.
Actually, go ahead and start with somebody else. Let me do a quick review.
Michael, do you want to go, or do you need me to start?
Yeah, I can go real quick. I mean,
Okay.
so one thing was just really the importance of what we're doing here, having events like this where we can learn from one another and get fired up around the cause. And so what I took from that really is also just the importance of collaborating if we want to do something and not just trying to be on our own doing it. And then also just like the reality of systemic oppression and how much it structures all of this, and that we need to name that and really try to intervene to do, you know, holistic, restorative ways of showing up for our youth and getting out of these things that we know are harmful.
Okay, I'm ready now.
Okay, Frank.
So the theme that I saw is about institutions, you know, so a couple of things with the institutions. One, that they have a set way of doing things. So that needs to be readjusted, reimagined, which then would require then a change in the system. So that's really what the theme that I saw out of the responses.
Oh, that's right. We didn't have Belen. So the themes that I heard were really around restorative justice being a buzzword. There was a lot of conversation about really understanding how that connects to mentorship. Also, the importance of, if we're going to be doing this work, we have to have self-reflection, and we have to do our own work. It starts with us. And so that was a huge theme that we heard. And so again, please, we encourage you to, please provide responses to those questions, because we will be using your feedback to inform the next steps to this process. Thank you all. Michael, I'm going to pass it back to you to introduce our artist.
I just want to say too, we're probably going to go just a little bit over time today. We won't go super far. If you're not going to make it through the whole time, I want to put a plug now. There is such a critical survey for you to take. It's going to take less than 2 minutes, but it is so important. It's really critical to our next step. So we'll give it out to everyone at the end. If you don't make it that long, then make sure you get it in your email, and please, 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 please fill it out. Okay, so Elena Pierce is a super talented, wonderful human being. She's an artist and member of Flowers and Bullets. Elena specializes in aerosol and digital art, caricatures, and rainwater harvesting. From the village of Wak on the Tohono O'odham Nation, Elena has lived in San Javier and Tucson the majority of her life. She works to create art which connects individuals with their culture, specifically by focusing on images which resonate with people of color, indigenous individuals, and youth. Elena is a member of both the core and art branch of Flowers and Bullets due to her passion for sustainable living and commitment to learning and sharing indigenous methods and culture. So I'm going to give it over to Elena. She's going to be producing some art for our 10-minute break. Of course, it takes a lot more than 10 minutes to do art, so she's going to stay on and throughout and towards the end here, and you'll be able to see sort of the finished project. So you can see Elena, her screen, and I'm going to put some music for us, and we'll come back at 11:10.
heard me. I am in love with you. And I know that love is just a shout into the void. It's oblivion, it's inevitable. And that we're all doomed. And that one day, all of our labor will be burned to dust. And I know that the sun.
Okay, gang, I'm going to start to bring us back just for the sake of time. We still got a little bit we want to do here. And like I said, I think we might run a few minutes past 12, not too much. I know some of y'all said that you have to go right on time or have had to go already. And so everything will be emailed out as far as next steps, and just requesting you to do this survey is an important part of us figuring out our next steps. So I'll hand it over to you, Belen. And Elena will be on too. So if y'all want to check out how her art finishes out over the next little bit, it'll be there.
Thank you, Michael. And yeah, I'm excited to see how that art turns out. Much better than my stick figure drawings. That's so, you know, in this next section, we want to really start to begin to identify, again, some strategies, some goal setting around how do we really move forward in improving outcomes for young men and masculine identified youth. And one of the tools that Michael and I talked about, I know he's been in conversation with others around the potential approach and framework to move this discussion forward, is a collective impact framework. I'm wondering how many of you on the call today have heard of that. Maybe give me a thumbs up if you're familiar with collective impact, kind of, sort of. Okay, okay. All right. I have a few hands up, few thumbs up. Okay. So what I wanted to do, great, thank you, Lance, for that. All right. So what I wanted to do is then just provide a very brief overview. Our intention for our rest of the time today is not to go in depth over collective impact. Again, it's to really begin to identify the strategies to move forward. But as you go into your next set of discussions, we'll do a breakout room. I wanted to at least provide this framework for you all. So the collective impact framework, you see the broad definition there is a large-scale social change that comes from better cross-sector and cross-community coordination rather than from the isolated intervention of individuals or organizations. So in a nutshell, it's getting everybody in alignment and moving in the same direction and supporting one another in that direction. There are some specific elements of collective impact framework, 5 to be exact, that I want to discuss with you, because again, this further informs the framework. So that first one, that common agenda, is that shared vision. So understanding the shared vision and the common goals of how, you know, we're moving forward, what really we're trying to achieve here. The shared measurement systems, that is around collecting data and measuring results consistently. Sometimes that looks like developing shared data tools. Sometimes it's a meshing of various data systems on a variety of platforms. There's also this element of continuous communication. So that communication is really about bringing stakeholders, community together, developing trust to move this work forward. The mutually reinforcing activities, again, that is working together, not necessarily, you know, moving together and coordinating every effort. It's not about doing the same work. It's about uniformity in the direction that we're trying to move in. And then the last piece here is a backbone support organization. So that is really typically in a collective impact framework, there is a backbone organization that holds the work, that has dedicated staff, that provides structure to the framework and moving forward. And in all transparency, you know, this is the beginning of a discussion. None of these elements have been decided or, you know, defined in any way. Today is that beginning of that discussion. So I wanted to share that framework, and then going into these next, so we're going to do some Google Gem breakout rooms again to kind of start to have this discussion or continue that discussion. In the Google Jam breakout rooms, we're going to be using, the facilitators will be using a SOAR analysis. So the strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. And like with the other Jam boards, you're going to see, you know, one frame with one questions around strengths. The next frame is questions around opportunities. And the next frame is questions around aspirations. And then the last questions around results. And so the SOAR really helps us think about strategic planning to identify opportunities, particular for improving outcomes for that. But before we go into the Google Jamboard, we thought it would be helpful to also review the themes, just as a reminder of like what's come to surface with the interviews and surveys. And I'll turn that over to Sarah to discuss.
Yeah, so these were the themes, the 7 themes that were identified through the community readiness assessment that the Southwest Institute for Research on Women supported with. And the first theme was really around, we heard youth need to be engaged as leaders, but not just as clients or problems. And this was really connected to youth-centered, youth-led work. The second theme was around youth need consistent, reliable mentors they can identify with, similar backgrounds or life experiences. And we really did a deep dive on Monday's session around what that could mean, how that is currently being experienced. The third theme, the juvenile justice system, law enforcement, and even schools have a punitive approach to engaging young men, and this exacerbates harm. And we had a deep discussion around this particular theme today with the panelists, and then in our own small groups. The next theme was, some interviewees see the merit of using a public health approach to understanding masculinity. We had a robust conversation in our small groups and also with the panelists around a public health approach as a potential framework. And then we have the theme of certain youth groups have specific needs not being met by current efforts. And we had conversations about that on Monday's session with panelists and also in small groups. And then these 2 additional themes that we didn't really speak about in conversations on Monday or today's session, but really surfaced in the community readiness assessment. And those themes were connected to community and familial insecurity. So lack of resources, funding, and investment influences youth's feeling of unsafe, not being able to be vulnerable. We heard a little bit about that with our youth participants today. And then training to combat toxic masculinity needs to be institutionalized across different systems, education, service agencies, police, courts, etc. Okay. And so those are the 7 themes that were lifted in the community readiness assessment, and we'd like to transition you into the Jam boards to practice or to complete a SOAR analysis on what are our current strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. What do we want to achieve? Okay.
Thank you, Sarah. And so I put the themes, I know it's kind of all together in the chat box, but if you need to refer to it and think about as you move through the breakout rooms or the Google Jam boards, if you need a reminder about the themes, they're there in the chat box for you as well. And so I'm going to open up the breakout rooms now. You'll be put into the same groups you were previously this morning. And we're going to allow for a good 30-40 minutes on this discussion to really dive deep into these elements. So I'm going to open those now.
Oh my goodness, what a great conversation. I almost didn't want to come back. So again, thank you all for your feedback. Please, please, please capture your thoughts on the Jamboards. We're absolutely going to use your feedback to inform next steps in the process. So it's so vital that you please share your perspective on the issue and your thoughts about how to move forward. Michael, I'm going to pass it to you to start to close us out.
Right on. Yeah, this is just so beautiful. I'm touched, I'm moved, I'm excited, I'm grateful. So let's do this checkout question and let's do it in the chat. And I'll just ask everyone to stretch yourself, see what you can come up with. So what is your personal commitment to improving the outcomes of young men and masculine identified youth? What is your personal commitment on this issue? And once we've all had a chance to share that in the chat, I'll kind of give y'all next steps and what to expect as we close out here. It's a hard question. Continuing leading circles. Right on, Craig. Craig, you're a great ally in this work. Thank you. Right on. Thank you. So to keep pushing my organization to become aware of the ways we've reinforced harmful impacts and do better, shift, work, and invite other systems to do the same. I commit to sharing my heart, mind, time, energy, effort, resources, patience to moving this all forward, making sure our mentors are having these much needed conversations and entities have tools to engage in these conversations, committed to continue learning and wanting to be a good partner and collaborator, expanding the awareness of the Boys to Men board, understanding fully the complexity that youth live and continue with mentoring and gender equity education work. And supporting the ongoing partnership between Goodwill Metro, Boys to Men, and other community partners. Continuing to serve on the board, continue working at Sahuarita High School, continue financial support of Boys to Men. As a promotora, continuing teaching about how gender roles are crucial to dismantle violence, challenge cultural aspects that increase violence. Right on. I recently joined a men's group and will continue that work so I can be a better mentor to our youth, linking up with Boys to Men. I hope so, Isaac. I hope so. That's awesome. Armando, feeling grateful and grounded. I commit my time and energy to help in any way I can, whether big or small, and always be aware of every action I make to be the best role model and help I can be to these youth, young men, masculine identified youth. I also hope to be a teacher or social worker. Right on. Committed to actively listening in all professional and personal facets of my life, doing the necessary research to bring these teachings into my work life at RYMP. I am ready to get involved with community partners and fostering community through collective impact approach for the youth in our communities. Right on, Holly, I see you. You need to run. And I know folks do. So let me wrap us up and tell you what we're going to do. So I'm so grateful. We've had a ton of folks pop in and out at different points. We know it's such a big commitment and just really, really grateful for those of you that have. So Sarah just put in the chat box a survey link. Again, it's really critical for us that you fill that out. It's going to take less than 2 minutes. It's just asking you to give us some really practical information. It's not hard, just some practical information about our next steps. Thank you, Anna. I see you. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of the Jamboards, all of the research, all of the data, all of the chat box, and we're going to put it all together and really pour through it. The next steps for us are really going to be to get back together for the folks who have said, yes, I'm willing and I want to sign on to this, and to try to work on, which we began it here today, on articulating that shared agenda, you know, and coming up with a plan of work. And our goal is, if there's the wherewithal, there's certainly the need, if there's the wherewithal to do a collective impact initiative, then we want to take that back to some funders and say, hey, we need your support because we want to do something radical to create different alternatives for the young men here in Tucson. And it seems to me like there's a lot of will and energy. So those are sort of our next steps. I'm just tremendously grateful. Want to recognize Sarah and Belen, Frank, Isaac, Anna, Marcia, Elena, who is continuing to make some awesome artwork right now. And just say a huge thanks to everybody who has been a part and showed up and given so much. Really grateful for all of you. Thank you, Justin. So we'll be sharing out next steps. Do the survey, look out for your email, and we'll be sharing out next steps. If you want to connect with us or some other folks that were present here, reach out and we'll help you get connected. Thank you all so much. Take care of yourselves this week. Take care of yourselves.